Why the pursuit of pleasure leads to misery, Aldous Huxley's truth. If I gave you unlimited pleasure, no pain, no sadness, no boredom, just pure, uninterrupted enjoyment, how long do you think you'd last before you begged for something else? A month? A week? A day? That's the dilemma Aldous Huxley screamed about decades ago, and we still haven't listened. In Brave New World, he envisioned a society where pleasure was so abundant that meaning had completely vanished. No suffering, no struggle, just comfort. And yet, that world was a dystopia. Not because it was brutal, but because it was too easy. Huxley wasn't just writing fiction, he was warning us. And the terrifying part, we're living it now. Look around. Everything is designed to please us. Infinite scrolls feed our dopamine like slot machines. Food is engineered to be addictive. Entertainment is available 24/7. We don't even have to be bored for 5 seconds anymore, there's an app for that. And yet, despite all this pleasure, we're anxious, depressed, lost. Why? Because we were never meant to live in a state of constant stimulation. Pleasure was never meant to be the goal. It was meant to be a signal. You did something meaningful. You connected, you created, you survived. But when we make the signal the objective, we lose the path that leads to it. We chase the feeling without the substance.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
This is where Huxley's genius hits hardest. He understood that the more we engineer life for comfort, the more we amputate our capacity for depth. But he knew that the absence of suffering doesn't create happiness, it creates numbness. And when you numb pain, you also numb joy. That's the hidden cost of pleasure chasing. It flattens the emotional spectrum. It makes everything easier but emptier. It's like living in a world where every food tastes like sugar. Sweet, yes, but quickly, sickeningly dull. So what are we actually chasing? Is it really pleasure or is it escape? Escape from boredom, from discomfort, from the terrifying silence of our own minds. But here's the kicker. The more we try to outrun discomfort, the more we empower it. Because pleasure, when not earned through effort or meaning, becomes hollow. That's why the more we indulge, the less satisfied we feel. It's not that there's something wrong with us. It's that we're using the wrong metric for a meaningful life. Huxley wasn't anti-pleasure. He wasn't some moralist trying to make us feel bad for enjoying things. What he feared was a society that would trade its soul for convenience. A world where people would stop asking why because they were too busy being entertained. And it's already happening. We don't reflect, we scroll. We don't sit with hard questions, we distract ourselves with easy answers. And when life starts to feel empty, we assume we need more pleasure when what we really need is more purpose. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly alive? Not just entertained, not just stimulated, but alive. For most people, it wasn't during a Netflix binge or a shopping spree. It was during struggle, challenge, connection, creation. Those are the moments that define us. And yet we spend most of our lives avoiding them because they're hard, because they demand more than passive consumption. But that's the paradox of being human. The things that fulfill us the most often hurt a little. They require effort, vulnerability, a risk, and pleasure, when disconnected from those deeper pursuits, becomes not joy but anesthesia. We are not wired for constant gratification, but we are wired for growth, and growth requires tension. The pursuit of pleasure without purpose is like inhaling without ever exhaling. At first it feels good, but eventually it suffocates you. And no amount of dopamine hacks or luxury goods can fill the void left by a life without meaning. This is what Huxley saw coming. A civilization so obsessed with comfort that it forgot how to feel. A generation so driven by the next hit of pleasure that it lost touch with its ideals, its creativity, its very soul. And the scariest part, we didn't need some evil dictator to enslave us. We did it ourselves, willingly. All it took was a little convenience, a little comfort, a little pleasure. In the next part, we'll dive into the psychological and neurological traps that make pleasure addictive and how society uses them to keep us obedient, distracted, and numb. We'll explore how our brains are hijacked by short-term rewards and why this makes it nearly impossible to experience real, lasting fulfillment. The dopamine dilemma, how pleasure hijacks the brain and destroys the soul. If you've ever felt like you can't stop scrolling, or like 15 seconds of silence makes you itch to check your phone, you're not broken, you're chemically wired. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of desire, is not evil. It's what helps us survive. It's the brain's way of saying, "That felt good, do it again." But there's a catch that most of us never see until it's too late. Dopamine doesn't care about your long-term well-being. It cares about repetition. It rewards what's easy to access, not what's meaningful. And in a world that's figured out how to manufacture pleasure on demand, we are drowning in rewards that have no substance behind them. It's no coincidence that social media, ultra-processed foods, endless streaming, and even some relationships are designed to maximize dopamine spikes. Every notification, every like, every reward loop is a tiny hit. It feels good in the moment, but it leaves a deeper hunger behind. Because the brain adapts. What once gave you a rush now barely registers. So we chase more. More intensity, more novelty, more distraction. And this is where misery begins to grow quietly, like rot beneath the surface. The pleasure is real, but the satisfaction is fake. And the more we indulge, the more we feel empty. Here's where it gets even darker. When you live in a pleasure-saturated environment, real life starts to feel dull. Reading a book, having a slow conversation, taking a walk, these things can't compete with the hyperstimulated world we've constructed. The brain starts to associate depth with boredom. It craves the sugar high, not the nourishing meal. And over time, our capacity for stillness, for presence, for wonder, it erodes. We become restless in our own skin. We lose the ability to sit with ourselves without reaching for some quick fix. We start to panic when we're not distracted. That's not freedom. That's dependency. That's addiction disguised as lifestyle. The irony is that we call this living. We call it convenience, progress, entertainment. But what we're really doing is outsourcing our sense of aliveness to systems that profit from our disconnection. The more we chase surface-level pleasure, the less we question, the less we reflect, the less we rebel. Huxley warned us that the most effective form of control isn't fear, it's seduction. We keep people happy, keep them entertained, and they'll never even notice the cage. Ask yourself, When's the last time you did something deeply meaningful that didn't feel good right away? Something that required effort, discipline, patience? Wasn't that the thing that actually made you proud? That stayed with you? Pleasure gives you a spike. Purpose gives you a story. And the more we confuse the two, the more lost we become. There's nothing wrong with enjoying life. But when enjoyment becomes your compass, every path starts to look shallow. The truth is, your brain isn't your enemy. It's just responding to inputs. But unless you become conscious of what you feed it, what you reward, what you repeat, it will always default to the easiest option. And in this world, the easiest option is almost always the most numbing. This is the dopamine dilemma. We are biologically drawn to what feels good, but psychologically starving for what feels real. We are surrounded by stimulation, but deprived of meaning. And unless we break the cycle, unless we reclaim our attention, our time, our intention, we will continue to trade joy for comfort and wonder for convenience. In the next part, we'll confront the ultimate lie of modern life, that happiness comes from maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain. We'll uncover why discomfort is not the enemy of happiness, but its prerequisite, and how avoiding pain is the very thing that guarantees suffering. The pain paradox, why discomfort is the doorway to a meaningful life. We've been told a lie so often, we've built our entire lives around it, that happiness is the absence of pain. That the more you eliminate discomfort, the closer you come to peace. But what if the opposite is true? What if pain isn't the obstacle to happiness but the path? What if the very things we try to avoid, failure, heartbreak, uncertainty, effort, are the only things that can lead us to a life worth living? Discomfort is not dysfunction. It's data. It's your soul trying to tell you something important. Pain is the body's way of saying, pay attention. And emotional pain is the same. It's not punishment, it's guidance. It tells you when something matters, when something's off, when you're out of alignment. But instead of listening to that signal, we silence it. We numb it with distractions, with dopamine, with shallow pleasures that keep us from hearing the truth. And the truth is, you cannot grow without discomfort. You cannot evolve without tension. You cannot find meaning without suffering. It's not cruelty, it's design. Think about the moments in your life that shaped you the most. Were they easy? Were they pleasurable? Or were they the moments that broke you open when everything felt uncertain, when you had to dig deep, when you were forced to confront parts of yourself you didn't want to see? That's where the real transformation happens. Not in the comfort zone, but in the chaos. Not in the shallow waters of ease, but in the deep currents of adversity. And yet, our culture is obsessed with comfort. We pathologize struggle. We medicate sadness as if it's a malfunction. We treat anxiety as an error. But these are not bugs in the system, they're features. They're signals that we're alive, that we care, that we're facing something real. And the more we try to sterilize life to make it predictable, painless, and controllable, the more sterile our experience becomes. We lose depth, we lose meaning, we become emotionally flat, psychologically fragile, spiritually numb. But there's a reason why ancient wisdom traditions, whether it's Stoicism, Buddhism, or existential philosophy, all point to the same truth, that to live well is not to avoid suffering, but to suffer well, to suffer with purpose, to let pain deepen you, not destroy you. Because when pain is integrated, it becomes power. When it's avoided, it becomes poison. Ask yourself, what are you avoiding right now? What fear are you letting dictate your path? What difficult conversation, bold move, or honest self-reflection have you postponed in the name of comfort? And what has that avoidance cost you? Because every time we choose ease over effort, we trade potential for safety. And the cruel irony is that the more we try to protect ourselves from pain, the more pain we create through regret, stagnation, and the quiet ache of a life unlived. Pain is not the problem. Our relationship to pain is. When we treat it like an enemy, we run from it. But when we see it as a teacher, we grow through it. And it's in that growth, not in comfort, not in pleasure, that we find the kind of fulfillment that actually lasts. In the final part, we'll explore how to build a life beyond pleasure, one anchored in purpose, presence, and deep personal truth. We'll discuss how to rewire your habits, reclaim your attention, and choose a path that doesn't just feel good in the moment, but leaves a legacy of meaning. Beyond pleasure, building a life of purpose in a world of distraction. So here we are. The world is louder than ever, faster than ever, more saturated with options, distractions, and pleasures than any generation before us. And yet, despite all this abundance, we feel more lost, more scattered, more hollow. Why? Because we've been trained to optimize for stimulation instead of substance. We've been taught to ask, what feels good right now? Instead of what's worth doing, even when it's hard. But the truth is, the first question leads to addiction. The second leads to meaning. And to live a life beyond pleasure is not to reject joy, it's to stop worshipping it. It's to recognize that joy is a byproduct, not a destination. It arises not from indulgence, but from alignment, from knowing who you are and choosing actions that reflect that truth, from doing what's right rather than what's easy, and from building, not just consuming, and from facing yourself, not just distracting yourself. Purpose isn't found through endless options. It's found through commitment. It's forged in the fire of limitation when you say no to the infinite and yes to the essential. It requires sacrifice, not of your happiness, but of your illusions. The illusion that you can have it all without cost. And the illusion that you can be everything to everyone and still be true to yourself. But the illusion that meaning will just appear if you wait long enough. It won't. You have to choose it. You have to fight for it. And that starts with attention. In a world engineered to steal your focus, reclaiming your mind is an act of rebellion. Turn off the noise. Practice solitude. Learn to be with your own thoughts without needing to escape them. That's where clarity begins. That's where you start to hear the whisper beneath the chaos, the part of you that already knows what matters, if only you'd make space to listen. Then comes intention. Ask yourself not just what you want, but what you're willing to suffer for. Because whatever you choose will cost you something. The only question is whether the cost leads to emptiness or to wholeness. If you're going to sacrifice time, energy, and life force, make sure it's for something that feeds your soul, not just your ego. Something that makes you feel more you, not less. Finally, there's integration. A life of purpose isn't built in a single moment of clarity, it's built in the daily choices that align your actions with your values. It's in how you show up when no one's watching, how you treat others when there's nothing to gain, how you spend your time when there's no applause. It's not glamorous, it's not optimized, but it's real, And in a world of simulations, that's revolutionary. So, what kind of life do you want to build? One that's filled with empty highs and constant noise, or one that's rooted in truth, even if it's harder? One that numbs you to discomfort, or one that challenges you into becoming who you were meant to be? Aldous Huxley didn't give us answers. He gave us a mirror. He showed us what happens when a society chooses comfort over consciousness, stimulation over spirit. But we don't have to follow that path. We can choose discomfort. We can choose discipline. We can choose depth. Because the pursuit of pleasure may promise happiness, but only purpose can deliver it. And now, the question is yours to answer. Will you keep chasing the next hit? Or will you start building the life your future self won't regret? That choice is the most philosophical act of all.